Hey, thanks for coming to Brian's Funhouse. Thanks for all the likes, subscribe, comments. Obviously, we're not in the Funhouse basement. We're at Navy Pier, Chicago's tourist trap. Why the hell are we at Navy Pier? Well, this is the scene of the crime. In 1981, I saw my first rock and roll show here. In August of 81, I was a 10-year-old boy, and I was at Navy Pier, Chicago Fest, seeing Cheap Trick. Today, 2023, inside there is an exhibit of great musicians from Illinois. I'm going to see if I'm in it. Let's go. And then after that, we're going to go back to the Funhouse and I'm going to show you some essential vinyl to have from bands of Illinois. Let's check it out.
Right off the bat, this is what I was telling you about, Chicago Fest, an event that ran from 1978 to 1982. So many awesome bands played here at Navy Pier, a pier that has been in various kinds of usage for over 100 years. There's a little Grammy for some Chicago polka. But look at all the amazing acts that played Chicago Fest. There's Cheap Trick, who I saw, Willie Dixon, the Shaka Khan. What an event. At first glance, I thought they captured little 10-year-old me and my sister in the Cheap Trick crowd, but it wasn't me. Oh well. And of course, Chicago has a great history of being the birthplace of the four-on-the-floor pounding house music. Which spawned, you might say, our rap scene, although my favorite rap artists are actually from New York. Sorry, Chicago. I played it in high school and abandoned it since then, and that is jazz. We get Herbie Hancock. He's actually most remembered in pop culture for his 1983 pop hit, Rocket. One of the greatest voices ever, Nat King Cole. Born in Alabama but moved to Chicago when he was 4. And like him, so many great blues artists also moved up to Chicago from the South. Chicago hands down has the best blues scene of any place in the world. Blues gave birth to rock, which gave birth to industrial and metal music. Two forms that Chicago has many great artists in, like Ministry, My Life with the Thrill Kill Cult, Big Bass. Also, here's one of the free handouts at a concert you would get at the legendary Chicago punk band Naked Raygun, kings of Chicago punk. Okay, Mudvayne. Not all Illinois bands are good. Sorry about that, world. Here are drumsticks from the amazing Jimmy Chamberlin of the Smashing Pumpkins, and some more of our alternative and punk artists. No, I'm not on the list. Oh well, my ego couldn't fit into a display case anyway. Here is a display on Chicago radio. In my opinion, the greatest radio market ever. Way back in the 80s, it was perfect. Radio these days, of course, is dead. Here is the soul and R&B display. Again, look at all those great artists. Next to it's the spiritual case. And these are some of the great manufacturers that called Chicago home. Here's the rock display. Check out all those amazing Illinois bands. There's an REO Speedwagon Award for selling 10 million copies of High Infidelity. Brick from Cheap Trick's hat. Great material issue. I could stay at this display forever. It's pretty much my youth. Now we will glance over folk. And then some country. Those are two styles I'm not too familiar with who came from Illinois. Like I had no idea Allison Krauss was from here. And a look at the record companies. Strange that they didn't mention Touch and Go Records, a classic hard rock punk label from Chicago. And here are some artists that did podcasts. If there's a way to listen to these podcasts, I will leave that link in this video's description. So now we're back at the funhouse in my drum room. It's also a salute to the great bands of Illinois room. And here are some shows that I played at legendary places like the Metro. Us punk bands fought really hard to get cheap shows there with no stage barricades. Alright, let me show you some vinyl. Alright, we're done with the tourist trap, Navy Pier. Walked by all those junkie stores, didn't need any of that crap. Came right back here to the funhouse. I'm going to show you some essential Chicago vinyl records that you need to have in your collection if you love rock, power pop, punk rock, whatever. Here we go. Now before I get to the vinyl, I will say, way back in the day, of course, everyone put everything on cassette, especially in the 80s. If you ever come across this, Chicagoan, I believe it was from Evanston, Matt Miller. He played acoustic guitar and was angry, and his lyrics were really great. Mysterious Matt Miller. He's got a 7-inch and a cassette tape. You want to get that cassette tape. We saw the blues display cabinet. All those display cabinets were great. I wish they could have opened it up and had so much more. I mean, Illinois has such a great history in rock and roll and other kinds of music. Of course, blues, Chicago and blues go hand in hand. My two older brothers introduced me to the blues. They brought me into a Chicago blues bar called Roses, or Roses Lounge. I was underage, but they were in with all the artists. They could, sneak people in. I got in there, and my first blues act, one of my first live acts seeing ever was Billy Branch and the Sons of Blues. Billy Branch is still around, blowing heart. Amazing harmonica player from the blues scene. I don't have any of his records, but I do have this CD. If you ever see Billy Branch, one of the amazing harmonica player, blues artists from Chicago. Also, I'll show you some movies or things you want to go. Naked Ray Gun, big famous punk band. We'll talk about them later. There's a What Poor Gods We Make, a story about them on DVD. You want to pick that up. It's good listening about Chicago history. Of course, Rockford's Own, just 2-hour drive from Chicago. Cheap Trick at Budokan. It's iconic. You gotta get. We've heard the albums. We've heard the live version of I Want You to Want Me. We've heard that for millions of years on Classic Rock Radio, so why not see it firsthand? One of the most exciting live bands ever, and if I ever compile a list of 5 great frontmen who really can't sing, y'all would be on that for sure. Jesus Lizard live, you gotta, in order to feel the power of that band, you gotta see them live. If you can't see them live, because they're really not playing that much anymore, there's 2 DVDs that you'd want to see. Of course, you want to read the book. Here's my own Just Words. It details the punk scene of the 1990s from my view, my skewed little egotistical weird view. Just Words, you can pick that up on Amazon. James Van Osdal, he did a Off the Record. He did a book about music. He is a Chicago disc jockey. You might want to pick that up. Great. Speaking about Al Jorgensen, he's got an excellent book as well about ministry. Speaking about ministry, they have an excellent book. This is just a visual history. It's flyers, advertising, album artwork stuff. It's just an amazing book of all kinds of stuff. If you love industrial music or thrash metal, whatever form of ministry did you write
they'll see that book. Disco Demolition, of course, Steve Dahl at Comiskey Park where the White Sox played. Great book about that whole event and about how people were fed up with disco and just wanted rock and roll back, you know. Don't we all want rock and roll back? It is here, but it is not hitting the charts. It is not. Kids have to listen to classic rock almost if they want rock. But anyway, let's go to it. At the end of this video, I'm going to show you what some of my own music brought up. I have a little vault in there, and I cleaned it up. Only wanted like 1 copy or some things, 2 copies for myself. Any other extra stuff I had, or I just went up on eBay, and I'll show you what that sold for. But let's get into Illinois rock. I'm not going to show you every Illinois or Chicago artist, rather, or Illinois artist, or around Chicagoland, whatever. I can't show you. It's too much time. Some I'm going to admit just because I don't have much time. Some I'm going to admit they just never liked. Yeah, we're supposed to feel hometown pride, but the band Mudvayne, they're from Peoria. Don't like them at all. Disturbed, formed in Chicago. I don't like them at all. So a lot of that new metal-y stuff, you're not going to hear me promote it because I think it's crap. All right. In the 90s, the punk scene was amazing here in Chicago. One of the bands that was a powerhouse, a train forcing you guitar and snotty vocals down your throat. Of course, Apocalypse Hoboken. This is Jerk Lessons. This is a 10-inch. If you see any of their records or CDs, you'll hear firsthand. Good snotty vocals with loud, chunky guitars behind it. Great stuff. One of the more popular bands that really blew up when the Warped Tour was a thing was Alkaline Trio. Big popular Chicago band. They still play around. Nice pop punk. They have a million albums out. For me, the earlier stuff is cooler from them, but I mean, it's still a great band. Bhopal Stiffs, punk band featuring Larry from Pegboy that we'll talk about later. Good, like this is from 1988. Just in your face, loud punk rock, really good stuff. Not screamy punk rock, but yeah, edgy, really good stuff. Oh, cover this word. Don't want to get in trouble. Big Black, songs about you know what. Steve Albini, of course, everyone knows Steve Albini is a great producer. He was also in this band, recorded in Chicago, formed in Chicago on Touch and Go Records. I was disappointed that the display when they had album labels from Chicago didn't have Touch and Go. What an iconic label from Chicago. Of course, Blues Brothers, Aykroyd's, of course, Canadian, but we won't hold that against him, eh? John Belushi, great artist and comedian and actor, and shame we lost him way too soon. But the Blues Brothers, obviously, one of probably the best movie ever made, the best movie ever filmed in Chicago, the greatest musical movie of all time. They also made some pretty good blues music for 2 comedians. The Bomb, featuring Jeff from Naked Ray Gun, who we'll talk about later. The Bomb, this is a 10-inch, really good stuff, good punk rock from them. Of course, like I said, yeah. Rockford's 2-hour drive west of Chicago, but we always claim this band is a great Chicago band. My favorite band, hopefully one of your favorite bands, the best rock and roll band in the world, the best American rock band, hands down, Cheap Trick. They've got a million records. Some you may like more than others, obviously, but man, the early stuff, unbelievable. This was recorded on Halloween 1977 in Rockford, Illinois, their hometown, playing great. And this is a like probably unofficial, at least bootleg, but I just wanted to show you unique stuff from each of the bands that you should be listening to from the great state of Illinois. Of course, you can't do Chicago without Chicago. This is a band they had to grow on me. You know, when I heard their stuff, I didn't like the horns so much. I was kind of into heavier stuff, but as I got older, really appreciate Chicago, especially early stuff. My friend Chuck Cheetah was in Defoliants, also in No Empathy. We'll talk about them later, but Defoliants, a great Chicago band. Talk about guitar work, a band from downstate Illinois a little bit. The Digits, unbelievable rock and roll, in your face rock and roll. Also on Touch and Go Records. So if you're looking for just loud, abrasive rock and roll, in your face stuff, songs about cars, and just great stuff. The Digits, they have about 4, 5, 6 albums, all great. Unsung heroes, you don't hear about them a lot when you're talking about the punk rock scene of Chicago, unfortunately. I don't know why that is, but 8 Bark, they have a few albums out, you want to check out them. They kind of formed it into V Reverse, so also check them out. A band that really got popular throughout the time, formed in the early 90s, and then just throughout time, because they got on the Fat albums, Fat records rather, they just
blew up, and now they're not really playing anymore. But 88 Fingers Louie, another great Chicago band, punk rock in your face. Joe playing bass in 88 Fingers Louie. Then he went on to Rise Against, which is one of the huger bands from Chicago. This makes me a little bit sad. We've just lost John Kedzie, the singer of this band. We lost Pierre, his brother, a few years ago, and just like 2 weeks ago, we lost John, singer of the Effigies, classic. They formed in the 80s and recorded off and on. They would reform and stuff, and it's just great punk rock. Chicago has a great history of punk rock, loud guitars, the attitude, just really good stuff. So yeah, we're sad to have lost John, but you know, the light at the end of the tunnel, I guess, is when these artists pass away, you still have great music to remember them by. Besides punk, alternative rock, another thing, Illinois bands do really great. Of course, Hum, you prefer an Astronaut. Great kind of dreamy rock, alternative rock, really good stuff. When did this come out? 95. Good record of them. That came out a little later, I think. Like I said, mentioned before, Jesus Lizard, outstanding band to see live. Really heavy guitar. The vocals may or may not be for you. He's not so much of a singer as like a talker and screamer, but really good stuff. It's an amazing band. The Jesus Lizard, they have a few albums out. I believe this is their third, I believe. This is just, if you had to pick one Jesus Lizard album, this album is called Liar, and it is just unbelievable. Great stuff. Just powerful stuff. Also powerful Wax Tracks in Ministry. They did, tons of offshoots. One of the coolest offshoot of Al Jorgensen was Lard, when he teamed up with Jello Biafra from the Dead Kennedys, San Francisco. But yeah, Jello signed this for me right there. It's pretty cool. But Lard, Last Imitation of Reed, great record. We have quite an industrial scene. We have house music I wasn't too familiar with and all that, but the out of the house, the heavy stuff is really good. This, I got blocked one time because I showed this cover and people were all upset. Okay, heavy metal scene was great here in Chicago in the 80s and throughout, still till today, but I was more familiar with everything in the 80s. This band formed around that, got signed by a major. However, when this came out, people were kind of done with heavy metal. This came out early 90s, forget what year, 92 says, so yeah, people were kind of done with heavy metal on the charts. It's a great record, hit or miss some of the songs, but overall, great record. Life, Sex, Death, The Silent Majority, really good stuff. The heavy metal scene, like I said, was great. This band, Enough's Enough, I look at them more of a power pop band. They had the Here and the Glam Image. I've talked about that a million times on this channel. Their first album was just pretty much straight glam heavy metal kind of stuff, but then the second album really showed their rock roots. Paul McCartney, John Lennon obviously influenced these guys a hell of a lot. This is a great album. This is their second album, Strength. Enough's Enough, great Chicago band. If you ever see that, you can find that CD really cheap. Pick that up. Power Pop, Kings of Power Pop, in my opinion, Material Issue. This is an early EP of theirs. So what you're going to see, and I see this CD all the time, even in the cheap bins. Pick it up, people. The album, for sure, pick it up. You want to order it. They just repressed it not too long ago. International Pop Overthrow, Material Issue. This is signed by the living two members, drummer and bass player, Ted and Mike. It is just unbelievable stuff. Sweet pop music. If the world was a just place, and I tell people it's not a just place, the world is a bad place, but if the world was a good place, Material Issue would still be around, and they would have been in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, won Grammys up their butts. It just would have been great. But the world is not. So sometimes we pass over things that, phenomenal pop rock band. Also a good pop punk band, still around sometimes, the Methadones, featuring Mr. Dan Schaefer, who sings for Sludgeworth, who played in Screech and Weasel, who also now is Dan Vapid and the Cheats. Amazing albums from him there. But if you ever see this, pick it up. Great Chicago, Illinois rock. And of course, like I already said, Ministry, this is an early one of theirs. Our industrial scene was amazing. I remember I would go to Club Neo, 950, Crowbar, Exit,
And towards the end of the evening, like around 1 a.m. on, they would start playing the heavier stuff. Really not this is the heavier stuff. Later stuff from them was heavy. But you would hear, and you would just, amazing stuff. Amazing time hitting the clubs. Way back when I was like 20, 21, 22, and I could stay up till 4 a.m., sleep, and head to community college at 8 a.m., and it wasn't, no problem at all. No problem at all, get 3 or 4 hours of sleep. Those were the days. Another offshoot, Al Jorgensen. This, he worked with Ian MacKaye from Fugazi. Palehead, great stuff. This is a 4-song EP, 12-inch trait. If you ever see this, pick it up. It is perfect punk industrial perfection. Punk rock nowadays, I'm showing you a lot of stuff from, 25, 30 years ago, but today's rock, the punk scene is good with the Mons. It's got, of course, Scott from Hoboken, Publix Hoboken, first album I showed you, guitar player, he from the Mons. This is from 2015, but they still have some releases that are a little bit more current. To me, 2015 is still current. Time flies when you get old. So the Mons, if you're just looking for straight ahead punk rock, hardcore, I don't know, I just call it straight ahead punk rock. The Mons, great stuff, making Chicago proud. And of course, you say punk rock, you say Chicago, you think of Naked Ray Gun. You just have to. They're the kings of all punk rock in Chicago. A lot of the bands that form, that idolize them, are usually pretty good. You can tell when a band has this, like, oh yeah, they grew up listening to Naked Ray Gun. I didn't grow up listening to Naked Ray Gun. I was about 19, 20 when I discovered them. And I wish I would have been cool enough to discover them a few years before, but Throb, an amazing album, 1984. I mean, people are listening. I was listening to Van Halen, 1984. Like, I was listening to Crew, Rat, stuff like that. I had no idea that rock, loud rock / punk rock perfection, people, was being released that same year. Naked Ray Gun, Throb, any Naked Ray Gun album. And I'm going to say any because just last year, they put out a record. They had like a 1,000,000-year hiatus between the early stuff and now. And this latest record, Over the Overlords, I tell you, is just as good as the early stuff. Not a lot of bands can do that. A lot of bands get older, then it's just not going to be the same. Naked Ray Gun, no. This is a great record. Over the Overlords. This should go gold, platinum, whatever. This in a perfect world, but we're not. Making Chicago proud. They've made Chicago proud throughout the years. What a great band. Another great punk rock band. This came out in the mid-90s. They Want Whatever from No Empathy. No Empathy is another just guitar, heavy, punk, in-your-face, rock and roll. Not screaming hardcore. You're going to hear singing, so it's nice. It's nice to the palate. But yeah, meat and potatoes is how you would describe them all the time. Meat and potatoes, punk rock and roll. Mark Ruffalo did so many bands way back in the day, but you know this was his big one. No Empathy came out in 1993. They Want Whatever. They have a lot of albums, but that's the one. That's the one you want to listen to. You're going to check out some Pegboy, 3-Chord Monty, early EP they put out, 1990. 4 songs, and you just get a taste of the greatness that is Pegboy. We go see them live. They're still playing all these songs because they're great. They're great songs. Yeah, Pegboy, 3-Chord Monty, heavy, great record. Pick that up. Alternative rock was, like I said, big. Also great in the Chicago area. This is Poster Children. They have a ton of records out. This is their first one, Flower Power. From Champaign, Illinois area, which is about 2 hours south of Chicago. Great Illinois band, Poster Children. Of course, I showed you on the display. One of their records went diamond, and I believe it was this one. Oh man, that's a lot of that's a few records sold there. Of course, the great, also from Champaign, Illinois area, the great REO Speedwagon. I believe Kevin, the singer, Kevin Cronin, was from the burbs of Chicago, just on the south side of Chicago. But yeah, they often, Illinois band, whatever. REO Speedwagon, classic rock. Can't say classic rock without talking about bands like REO Speedwagon. Great stuff. More current, big Chicago band, punk band, like I said, Joe from 88 Fingers Louie played bass, helped form this with Tim. who was also in the Chicago punk scene, Rise Against. So two of the guys came out of the Chicago punk scene. This was their one that really broke them through. 2004, had a slow song on it called Swing Life Away. But that brought people into the band, and they got to discover some great, I'd say their first two albums are kind of hardcore punk, and after that, not so much pop punk, but more like rock, harder rock stuff. I don't know. It's really good, heavy stuff. Rise Against, they have a ton of albums out now. They're one of the few rock bands that can have a long career, because no one has careers anymore, but that's a good one there. Screech and Weasel, people see this logo, especially around this area, and go crazy. This is their second one, Boogada Boogada Boogada. This is, the first one was pretty much hardcore. This was hardcore punk, but kind of leaning towards some pop punkness into it. The album after this, like I've said a million times on this channel, Screech and Weasel, the album after this, My Brain Hurts, is probably in my top 5 albums of all time. Unbelievable album. But yeah, this is when the band was still young and snotty and all in-your-face punk rock. Boogada 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 by Screech and Weasel, a Chicago area band. Newer stuff from Chicago. Band is making us proud. They are getting pretty darn big. Sincere Engineer. They are a newer punk rock band from Chicago. Good old rock and roll stuff. And they have a few albums out. Sincere Engineer. You want to check them out. Making Chicago proud. Keep on carrying that torch. Those old punks are getting old, so we need new people. Like I said, Sludgeworth, one of my favorite Chicago area bands. They are back together. I did hear them play a new song live. They're playing Riot Fest in like 2 weeks from now. Probably hear hopefully more than one new song, which would hopefully mean that they're coming back and going to put out some music. But if not, we still have this stuff from the early 90s, pop, punk, perfection. This is like a compilation of stuff called Losers of the Year, Sludgeworth. Great stuff. Back to classic rock, Chicago's king, classic rock. Illinois is Styx from Chicago, Crystal Ball. They got Tommy Shaw on this one. I think Tommy Shaw is a Florida, Alabama boy. Oh, he's from down south, but he came up, helped out the Chicago boys with some great high-pitched vocals, and it really sticks when you talk about great classic rock. You know, REO Speedwagon from Illinois, Styx from Chicago. Illinois, the king of classic rock state. The kings of alternative rock, whether you like them or not, you gotta admit they are freaking huge. I'm gonna show a door. It's too easy to show. Siamese Dream, or my favorite from them, Gish, talking about Chicago's own Smashing Pumpkins. Billy Corgan and his wife own a tea shop in Highland Park, which is just beyond the north side of Chicago, so he's still true to the scene. But yeah, Door, Smashing Pumpkins, was it Melancholy and Infinite Sadness? I mean, Smashing Pumpkins owned the 90s, owned alternative music. What a great career they had. Pop punk from Chicago area, Smokin' Popes from Illinois. Great band. You may or may not have heard of them. They were on a few movie soundtracks to kind of help them break it a little bit. This was from 97. This is called Destination Failure. I believe this was their third proper album. I forget. But anyway, great stuff. All their albums. I mean, because they keep on putting stuff till now, 2023. So forever they've been putting out stuff. Great stuff. Smokin' Popes. This is kind of a alternative rock band from the late 80s. I want to say 88. Yeah, The Social Act. Wanted to show off some more obscure stuff from Illinois and Chicago scene. So that way you think I'm cool and I know what I'm talking about. Strike Under. Great. This is a repress of it, a reissue of it. Great punk rock stuff from Chicago. Strike Under. We're getting to the end, people. When you talk about alternative rock, now Urge Overkill, their first few albums were more, I don't know, experimental. Not weird experimental, but not straight ahead rock. Little weird. But then they pulled it all together for this release. Saturation. Perfect pop rock. Perfect rock and roll. What was this? 94, 95? I forget the year. It doesn't matter. It's great. Pick it up. 93, I believe. And just, if you see it on CD, because you'll see this, some of these stuff I'm showing you on vinyl, you'll see on CD in cheap bins at cool stores. Pick it up, man. Great music. Urge Overkill. Now for compilations, if you don't want to buy all those records, you just want a little sampling platter. This series, great series. Octoon Chicago. It's got a Public Solokin, some of the other punk bands, Screech Weasel I showed you. You want to pick this up. It's a little sampling of Chicago's punk scene way back in the late 80s, early 90s. Great stuff.
Achtung Chicago 2, Part 2, and Achtung Chicago Part 3. Any of these records you see, pick them up. The Achtung Chicago series, great way to discover the Chicago punk bands from that time. Great way to look at the classic rock stuff is the Loop. It's a great classic rock station, or rock station rather. Then they formed into classic rock. The Loop put out a few albums. This one's from 1981. Hog Butcher for the World. This was also another great punk rock compilation. It's got Big Black on it. It's got Material Issue on it. Urge Overkill. Bloodsport. This is great stuff. That's another good Chicago themed compilation. Of course, a Chicago music compilation #1, Light into Dark. Yes, I own it. Yes, I'm cool. Believe it's to be the first Smashing Pumpkins appearance. So, yep. Got that, baby. I don't know what that is. You Weren't There, another movie. It's a great DVD and a great LP soundtrack to it. You Weren't There. Story of Chicago punk from 1977 to 1984. So the earlier Chicago punk stuff. All great stuff. Now you're looking at a later Chicago punk stuff. I was in bands in the 90s Chicago punk scene. And on eBay, like I said, I went through my room and threw some stuff up there. And the aim of any person in a band is to have fun. To be a full-time musician is everyone's dream. It really doesn't happen. It only happens to like 3 or 4% of the musicians in bands. So it's to have fun, and my own personal dream was to stay out of the cheap dollar CD bin. Not that the groups in the cheap CD dollar bin are all bad. No, you can pick up some great stuff in the cheap LP bins or CD bins. But my personal thing, I just want to stay out of that bin. So I was happy that I found some more copies of music that I played drums on in groups I was in, put them up on eBay, and they all stayed out of the 99-cent range. I'll show you on the screen. I had a Boll Weevils test pressing. A test pressing is a vinyl album you get. Maybe they'll send one to the album label or a few copies of the band, and you listen to it and go, yep, press it. I had one for the Chicago EP, which is an early EP I did with the Boll Weevils. That went for over $1, so I was happy. I think that went for like 18 bucks or something. I had a Boll Weevils live album, the last appearance of myself in that band. I left when we part ways October 95, so that was recorded spring 95, and that went for a good amount. And the highest thing, I was really proud of, a band that I was in for 12 long years, 12 great years, a band that we all quit our jobs and hit the road for a while, and we had a lot of stories of that band in my book. Another cheap plug, Just Words, Oblivion. I found a sealed copy of our first album, Stop Thief, and that went for just under 80 bucks. So wow. Thank you very much for feeding my ego, making me feel like I stayed out of the dollar bin. So that's it. Whew. Hope you stayed with me all the time, and hope you learned that, man, Illinois has a great music scene. Hope you check out some of the bands that I mentioned, and thanks for watching.